Aloha and welcome to the Groundswell Marketing Podcast, where we connect you with savvy entrepreneurs and great marketing ideas. So in this episode, I'm introducing you to Bruce Kasanoff. Bruce Kasanoff, and he is one of the most interesting people that I wanted to make sure that kicked off my podcast series with. I mean, he's written multiple books. One that's amazingly funny called How to Self-Promote Without Being a Jerk, Never People What to Do. I actually wrote a review in his book back in 2001 called Making It Personal. It's predicted many of the personalization practices that we see today. He's co-authored several books, one that's really interesting called I Am. We don't get into any of those books. We get into some of his philosophy and so forth. But one of the things to really consider with him is that he's also just like a top influencer on LinkedIn. The Chartered Institute of Marketing named Bruce one of the top 50 influential thinkers in marketing today. He was part of Ogilvy and Mather. He's worked with Don Peppers and Martha Rogers when one-to-one marketing. That's where we met. He's got an MBA at Wharton School. He's unbelievable in terms of an entrepreneur. He's helped raise like over $20 million for startup and entrepreneur ventures. He's worked, he's AKA marketing guru. He doesn't think he is, but he totally is. He's worked with over like 250 entrepreneurs over the 5 years, birthing tons of programs. It goes on and on and on. And now he's got a group called Park City Think Tank, which publishes books and reports that bring humanity back to business, which I 100% agree, which is humanizing marketing. So this episode, you're going to learn so many interesting things. Stay for the very end because he adds some really great ideas in terms of like how a new pillar for growth marketing that I never really thought of. And comes from an area that I don't think most people think of when they think of growth marketing. But we cover some really cool topics from the future of marketing to the state of marketing to what he's up to and how it has an impact on people's personal brands and basically the inner workings of what makes them successful and move forward in life. So without further ado, let's get on with the podcast. Let's get rolling. This is episode 1 with Bruce Kasanoff. Hello and welcome to the Groundswell Marketing Podcast. Today we have Bruce Kasanoff. He's a strategist, entrepreneur, LinkedIn influencer, author, speaker, ghostwriter, so many things. As you heard from my previous introduction, kind of going through his glowing background and so forth. We're just going to dive into some questions. I mean, we were just having a quick chat and reminiscing a little bit about some of our common background. But first and foremost, I want to introduce you to Bruce. And hello, Bruce. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Scott, it's such a time warp to be here with you from, I think we last talked 20 years ago. So it's really fun.
Yeah, let's maybe give a little perspective of like how we met and that relationship there. You and I connected back in, this must be 1997 range. Is that right?
Right around there. Yeah.
Right around there. Yep. And that was when Personalization, I was connected to I think it was your partner at the time, Don Peppers.
Yep. Yeah. So I was part of Peppers and Rogers group, which we did one-to-one marketing, and personalization was just becoming a thing, and the personalization summit and all of this. And that was, 100% of my focus then. It's a completely different world today.
Totally. And I was obsessed then about personalization, as you know. I mean, yep. I think I read somewhere when I was doing research that you actually worked with Don because you connected with Seth Godin or something. It's like, can you tell me a little bit about
that? Yeah. So Seth used to, when he launched a new book, he would take his advance and he'd do something flashy to get attention. He was very smart. It still is very smart. And so he took out a full page ad in the New York Times, not only to promote a book, but he had founded Yo-Yo-Dine, I think Marketing it was called, a startup. Yahoo eventually bought it. But he said in the ad, he said, before you come, read The One-to-One Future by Don Peppers and Martha Rogers. I was working at Ogilvy at the time, and I was just, crammed. And so I bought the book on the way there. I got there. He had an office on the Hudson River. And I just started to skim through it. And I sat in the parking lot for 45 minutes thinking, this is the smartest thing I've ever read. And then I went in, I met Seth. I came back again. I had lunch with Seth, and because he was actually looking for talent for his company, and he's like, you got to work with Don. And so then I sent an email to Don, which I think said, hello, it's me, because we used to joke about that in the subject line. And 10 days later, I was his partner. So it was a kind of a fairy tale.
So I met Don speaking in Calgary at a TELUS convention center, and he handed out he did a speech explaining it, one-to-one marketing, and he gave away that book. I left that speech blown away. I finally realized exactly my calling, like, because I was already really just infatuated and immersed into internet marketing, but I saw that as the future. Read that book cover to cover, and I'm telling you, I literally said, I am going to find a way to work with Don Peppers. I'm not joking at all. I literally read that book and went, this is the most, like, same thing, most intelligent thing I've ever read.
Yeah. So Don and Martha are a remarkable team, brilliant and charismatic, and were able to take pretty complicated ideas and make them sexy and fun. And when you're trying to, be disruptive, I guess that's extremely important. And the thing that made them effective in the early days, meaning 95 to 2000, let's say, was because of what I just said. They could make complicated ideas simpler, not simplistic, and fun. That they would get, CEOs to come, big CEOs to come to their events. And therefore, technology companies recognized this and would partner with us, because if Don or Martha gave a speech, then the audience was super high level. And they could do things like private meetings, so the sponsor could have, we're just going to have, C-level people in a room, 15 people after a speech. And so therefore it enabled us to have these massive tech sponsors, and it powered our growth. We went all around the world. I started our training business, our interactive business, and our research business. And it propelled those ideas, mainly, treat different customers differently, which everything is built on now. Amazon's whole, business model is essentially built on that. And but it was a new idea then.
Yeah, it was very fresh. And, when, and privacy was a big issue then. That's why I think it took so much, I just got such a great pickup with the industry on the personalization. But when Don and Martha came on, I was relentless. I reached out to Don repeatedly till he finally took a call for me. And once he heard what I was up to and the people I brought around, he gave me a fair listen. And man, that guy brought in everybody, like American Airlines, United Airlines, like all the industry, PNG, KPNG, like it was serious business. Like I was way over my head. I was like in my early 20s. And but what an experience that was. And that's why we were so lucky to meet you. And then you authored your book on personalization. And thank you for giving me advance copy and being able to write a review. That was an honor for me. Maybe just as a segue, let's talk about, maybe a little more detail about what is personalization and what is it now?
So, the basic idea was not all your customers are the same, not just in terms of their value, but also not in terms of their needs. And the value stuff people kind of got already, this idea of some customers are more valuable than others and most valuable customers. But the needs idea was not well understood or even acknowledged. And I would say to this day, it's not fully acknowledged. That is, that customers have different needs and that you don't want to be saying the same thing to every person. So back 20 years ago, one of the things that I did was I came up with, again, I was running our training business, and I came up with this definition of intelligence, that intelligence was two things. One was having something of value to say, but the second part was knowing what to say differently to different people. And so that's really the core idea underlying one-to-one marketing. And then personalization, really, it's a subtle difference, I think, was the use of technology in companies to support that sort of, whether you call it one-to-one marketing or personalization, but to differentiate how you treat people, what offers you see, what products you see, how you communicate, or hopefully, fundamentally changing the services and everything about that relationship. What's happened, I think, since then is a lot of this has become mainstream. Like we don't, so at the time, there's, you'll remember the company Broadvision, that, their big thing was portals, and they really were at the early stage of PC banking, of you could go online to do your banking. That was what, and it, now we don't even think about it. It's everywhere. You can't compete if you don't have that service. And so the technology underlying it has become prevalent. Amazon and one-click shopping, and you go online to buy stuff. It's just part of our culture. But I still don't think that the core concept of really tailoring the relationship to match a person's or company's desires is still, as it hasn't advanced as much as it could have. One of the challenges for that, I talked about needs before. So companies try to segment by needs, and you can define segments by needs. It's pretty easy to do. What's hard is to map people into those segments. And because of that, I think progress has been less, over 20 years than I would have hoped, because that's still a struggle. And so I know theoretically there's people out there who they want to interact this certain way, but I don't necessarily know which ones, and therefore we're still struggling. And then I think the second thing is that there's still so many marketers, and by that I mean entrepreneurs, executive CEOs, and literally marketers, who still have this funnel-driven, leads-driven, push, sell way, because they just don't know any other way to drive revenues. And even if they theoretically say, "Oh, I understand there's a kinder, gentler way to do this," at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, when they get someone breathing down their necks on quotas and budgets, they still revert to that other way, even though doing so really undermines trust and relationships and creates the situation that exists today, which is basically buyers avoid sellers, if at all possible, until the very last minute when they're actually ready to make a purchase. And that's especially true in the B2B segment.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. In fact, I think that taking that approach where most marketers are just trying to sell, they're not. To me, it's like you hit a point earlier, which was that it's the pressure of the sales, pressure of the quarterly earnings and so forth. And to me, it's like one of my sayings that I like to say is, because I'm considered a growth hacker, is patience is a new growth hack. It's like, if you really want to grow a Groundswell or a real committed, trust-based customer base, then you need to take the time to do it. And right now we're so short-term thinking, and sales is so prevalent that they step over these bigger opportunities to understand customer needs and deliver on against that. So where do you see it going, next? Like where should a company go, rather than where it's going next? Where should a company take their interactions? Because if I look at your body of work that you're into right now, it feels to me, and it doesn't seem odd to me, maybe someone else outside doesn't, but it's like you've kind of shifted into this more purpose-driven, marketing, if you will. Yeah. And I realize that you're dealing with entrepreneurs, but maybe does that have something to kind of connect with this idea?
Well, so first of all, I love what you said. Patience is the new growth hacking. I think that's 100% true. I think the problem is that people and companies lack discipline, and they lack grit. And
totally.
And because they lack grit, they bounce from strategy to strategy, and they don't stick with. So the reason that people criticize, well, you can't serve, don't sell, it's nice, but you can't stick with it always. The reason you can't stick with it always is only because you haven't stuck with it enough. You haven't been consistent. You didn't start early enough, because people say, "Oh, relationships matter," but they don't. They don't live by it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you live by it, if you say, so basically, what you want to be as a marketer, and I don't mean literally you have to be in the marketing department. I mean as someone who makes your company or your business or you personally more attractive to people who have needs that they're willing to invest money in. So that's long-winded way of saying eventually there'll be economic value here. And what happens is that I believe in trust, but I don't have the grit to stick with it. And which means that, if I revert when my situation, I need more money or we need more sales. And therefore all that stuff I said about trust and not bugging you and not pushing you into a solution that's not right for you, or trying to get you to buy prematurely, or trying to, push harder instead of improving my product.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things will slow you in the long run. They're not, by pushing harder, I'm not increasing my future potential. What I'm doing is I'm getting some marginal revenue earlier, but in the long run, I'm going to get less, because what I'm doing is I'm reinforcing the fact that I'm not really very good at satisfying your needs. Maybe you buy one more time, but I've just reinforced that you didn't really feel that comfortable with the transaction. You did it anyway, and you really should start looking for another solution. The flip side of that is, in the serve don't sell, not the thought process is, if I'm like, for example, one of the single best things you can say is, today we're not your best solution. I can tell you when and why and how we would be.
Interesting.
But I'm going to hook you up with someone else who can solve this tactical need you have right now. And let's keep talking about the larger, and let's keep talking about a customized solution for you. I know you're eager you have 2 weeks to do something that take care of that. I'll help you. I've got a good friend. These guys are great. But let's keep working on a longer term solution that will get you out of this, every 2 weeks you have an emergency mode. Nothing builds trust like that. And it builds trust like that because you've earned trust. You're actually saying what's best for you. So back in the Peppers and Rogers day, Don and I used to work with Hewlett-Packard. We went around the world with this 2-day program called Building Share of Customer. And that program launched over 100 initiatives at HP to drive growth. And one of the I forget what I would say, like, GMs, I guess. She had an enterprise server business, and she determined that the best thing for her clients and for Hewlett-Packard was to prematurely migrate people off of her systems, and so drive them elsewhere at HP. And she went, I think, to the CEO basically to say, I think this is in the best interest of the company and of our clients, but it will drive my numbers down. And I want permission and cover to do that. And she got it, and she did that. So she essentially tore down her own division, but with the big picture in mind. I think you should have as many of those people as humanly possible, because that's the embodiment of what I'm talking about.
I'm seriously slow clapping the entire time you're chatting about that, because you just hit on so many major points that are about my new book that I haven't really talked to you about, which, we don't want to go into it right now. I want to focus on you. But one of the key things that I think that really resonates with me is the idea of putting the needs of the customer first and building trust, and it's focused on the relationship, not the transaction. When you're thinking short term, it's really a transaction. Like how many times I've in the past just took a client because I was thinking I needed the money, but it wasn't really the right fit for me. Yeah. And you're not serving them properly, because to me, it's like, I have my 3 principles. Can I make a difference? Am I passionate about the project, and do I like the people? And if I compromise on one of those, it never works out the way it should. I never give them the value that they deserve.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. The other thing
that you guide, to help, like, do you help people with creating these principles and things to kind of help them with this sort of process? Like, is that something you do, or is this something you're?
I mean, I have I have two sides to my life. One is on LinkedIn and Forbes, I write or create visuals, visual thinking images that about things that I care about. And it doesn't have to be, I don't think it has anything to do with marketing. I don't consider myself in marketing anymore. But it's whatever I believe. It's a lot of things around doing well by doing good, basically. Mm-hmm. But then I'm a social media ghostwriter for entrepreneurs.
What is that, actually? I'm curious.
So what I do is I have, at any given moment, about 10 to 12 clients who I talk to weekly. They tend to be CEOs or founders, but a few are a speaker or author. But we talk. We have a 30-minute conversation. And I ask them essentially what's on their mind that week. There's a few of them who are pretty, growth driven and think about what we're doing in a way of growing their business. But most do not. Most of them are they're trying to give people a window into their thought process, because you start to run companies and it's hard. There's layers around you, and there's policies, and there's, the person who used to talk to you all the time now is 2 levels below you. And so I take that conversation and I turn it into either like a post, which is, a couple hundred words, or actually an article, or sometimes someone wants help with the introduction. They're launching they have a sales meeting, or they have a conference they're keynoting. And so basically I'm helping these entrepreneurs to communicate without having to go through the hassle of writing or organizing. They just get to talk. Mm-hmm. So they actually are paying me to write. But I would say that 3 months in, pretty much everyone will say that's only half the value. That the other half of the value is that I'm kind of like a coach, but I don't say I'm a coach, meaning that I'm not helping with tactical. I'm not giving them guidance. What I'm doing is I'm asking them questions and helping them to dig deeper into what do they really believe and why. And most of these men and women, they just don't have that opportunity. A few of my clients are in, like a CEO peer group type of thing, but it's different. We actually end up having, sometimes we have very tactical conversations, but a lot of times we have heart-to-heart conversations, or the last 5 or 10 minutes we have heart-to-heart conversations, because I'm fascinated. I want to know, well, why are you doing that? And what you said this week seems to be different than what you said 2 weeks ago. They seem like opposing forces or opposing views. How do you reconcile that? And a lot of times people say, I never thought of that. That's a good point. And we talk about it a little bit. So if you see, that's really not, like, I don't ever deal with marketing staff. Not that, I mean, that's actually not true. Sometimes they'll come into a discussion because, someone wants to say, I want you to understand what we're doing next month. But I'm not working on a marketing project. I'm not working on an advertisement. I don't write web copy. I'm dealing with entrepreneurs one-on-one and saying what matters to you, and everything that I create is in my client's voice. It's not in my voice. It's not in the company's voice. It's in the person's voice, which really is the embodiment of what we were talking about a few minutes ago, about 20 years ago. It's personalization, really personalization. So is this company, which is a set of rules and policies, and it's, anonymous, and it's a system, versus is there a person here? And so what I do is I never really thought of it until this conversation, but it's the ultimate embodiment of that, is that I'm taking the person who started the company or runs the company and making it possible for him or her to share genuinely his or her voice, his or her thoughts, his or her beliefs, with not only a large audience, but an audience that can actually individually respond. Because all my clients, I say, if you're not going to personally respond to comments, you shouldn't do this.
See, that's the thing is I actually think that's all marketing, because you're going unique. What's your unique value proposition? You're actually marketing people's true voice. You're like everything you're describing is actually, and personalization, you're making it, you're really helping them personalize their own voice and connecting to the audience that they're trying to do in a meaningful and truthful and maybe in a deeper level than just surface, conversation. That's what fascinates me is this journey you've been on. Is I think it's like it is marketing, but I think it's a new form of marketing.
Well, so here's the deal. So this is a critical point. The reason that so much of what companies do doesn't work is because people want to label other people. So you want to turn a human being into a customer. You want to turn a human being into an employee. You want to turn a human being into the accounting guy. And that then creates distance. And it has no benefit. In fact, it hurts. So I agree with what you say, but I would never, ever say that. Meaning that I don't want to create this abstract, I don't want to abstract a human relationship. I don't want to create a distance. I don't want to say, well, I'm going to put you in a box and you're going to be a customer, and I'm going to turn this conversation into a marketing activity. No, I want to actually communicate with human beings. I see my clients, who I even reluctantly call clients, as a human being. And the reason that our relationship works is because they view me as a human being. I view them as a human being. We talk heart to heart. I get deeper with clients faster than I probably have with the human relationships in my life for the first 40 years. It took me a while to kind of realize how to do that, quite honestly, because we're human beings. And then I obviously didn't create social media. I'm not Al Gore. I didn't invent this stuff, but I use social media to then give other people a way to completely break through those abstract concepts: customer, boss, CEO, leader, marketer, and you can communicate directly. You can say, one of the most amazing things, I had a client, I no longer have this client because the communications team was too powerful, but one of the biggest e-commerce people in the world, and he was using social media to communicate with employees, and there were many, many thousands of them, because the entity was so large that people in his organization had no way to communicate directly with him. But if he published something on social media, someone could comment and he could respond to the comment, and no one would say, oh, well, you're fired because you went over my head and my boss's head and my boss's head, and you went directly to the guy at the top of the food chain. No, I commented on his post and he responded. So it's enabling the human relationships that we all used to have, that somehow we've abstracted into
barriers,
marketing or sales or whatever. Yeah, that's why nobody wants to. I don't want you to talk to me if you're going to play sales guy.
Right.
Pure and simple. You play sales guy, get the hell out of here.
Yeah, people's bullshit meters are right up now anyways. Like,
oh my God, yes.
Yeah, it's like so high right now. It's just gone off the charts. So it's like you're going right to like real depth. That's to me is what I think everyone is seeking is authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And ironically, authenticity. Joe Pine's going to be one of my next guest speakers.
I love Joe.
Yeah. He goes, me and him we go back as far as with yourself as well.
Yeah. The last time I've seen Joe more recently, we were both, this is probably 8 years ago. Last thing I really did we both gave keynote speeches in Helsinki at I'm not going to get this right, the World Forum on Mass Customization and Personalization. And Joe and I went out that night, like drinking scotch, and he was smoking cigars. I don't smoke cigars, but we walked through the streets of Helsinki, and he's such a smart guy. I mean, really makes me think. And he was going to come to Park City actually this year, but I don't think he ever made it. So I almost saw him. But so he said one of the most profound and true statements about all this stuff, meaning personalization, customization, whatever you want to call it, that it's only superficial. I'm not going to say this in a cruder way than he did. It's only superficial crap unless it has economic value. So unless the person spending the money, has is willing to spend money for this level of customization or service or differentiation, then what we're talking about is not meaningful.
Not valued.
Yeah. It has to be. I'm like saying, I'm putting your name on the email. So what? If it has to have value to the buyer.
Right. Well, there's an investment, not just money, there's also investment of time. You have to be willing to invest some time and be willing to, go through whatever the process is, depending on the complexity. Joe Pine is absolutely brilliant. He gave me an advanced copy of, I'll let him sort of bring it out in the podcast, but like what he's up to now just blew my mind. I'm like, I can hardly wait to hear him on the podcast because I just feel really, in fact, the only reason we first connected was I wrote his very first review on Amazon.
Oh, wow.
When you could actually, I don't know if you remember this, but in Amazon you used to be able to write a review, but it would show your full name and your email address.
No, I don't remember that.
It used to, yeah. It didn't cloak it. It didn't put it behind it. So he actually sent me a note, a personal email, thanking me for my review because I read his. As soon as I read the Don Pepper book, anything that was in the category I read, and he had the mass customization book. I can't remember the title of it at the moment, but and I wrote the review, and our relationship has we've been in touch. I've been out to many of his summits and stuff. So
no, he's great.
Yeah, and I actually went to Vegas and played golf with him, and he loves cigars. He even got me to smoke a cigar, and I, reluctantly did it, but I did it with him, so I was stoked to do it.
Not going to happen to me, but okay.
Fair enough. So, segueing a little bit with this, with this topic of, not being valued, like, what do you really think customers value now more than anything? What are they aching for?
Well, I think a couple of things. So this is a good life example. So I'm going to force you to do the same thing that I just said. So I'm going to answer that first. Mm-hmm. What are people aching for? Because I don't really know anybody who thinks of themselves as a customer. You might say, okay, I'm the buyer here, but you don't wake up in the morning and say, it's another beautiful day. I'm so happy to be a customer. You just don't do that.
Right.
And
right.
so
use the language like humans looking for.
I mean, it's insidious the way that this works, and it's because you make your money, serving marketers or selling or so I get why it happens, but so you said this earlier. People want genuine. They want they don't want bullshit. They want genuine. Who is this person? I won't go through this, but I've made immense changes in my life because I want I don't want superficial. I want deep, meaningful, connected relationships in my life. And I think a lot of people fundamentally, that's what they want. So they don't want to be sold. They don't want spin, although we have a problem on social media, and it's huge in terms of a lot about social media magnifies the negative, and in many respects, there's this implicit belief that you're going to be a good person on social media, but if you're not a good person on social media, you can do some really destructive things. And I think the same is true for for selling and marketing, that you can, social media and anything like that, the use of technology to communicate, is a constant race between people who have positive impulses and people who just want to abuse the system. And we just run to see how long will it take before this gets destroyed. And usually the force that's causing the destruction is basically advertising. It's
Agreed.
I wouldn't go all the way to say advertising is the root of all evil, but it's in the top three. It's
like pollution.
It is, and the reason is because we don't have yet a better system. It's the same with democracy. We don't have a better system yet, although we see the abuses. It's the best we have, but the second you use advertising as a business model, you're no longer serving the interests of the people that theoretically we're all there to serve. If advertising is directed at, quote, customers, but it's not serving the needs of customers, it's serving the needs of, somebody whose job it is to say, oh, look, it only cost us $1.15 to be seen by 1,000 eyes. That's great. It only cost us, $5.12 to convert, a click into a order, but what that ends up doing is it ends up, like retargeting, where, if people don't know, that's like when you look at something online and then for the next 2 weeks you see that same ad, 8,000 times. That is just like, that is the embodiment of some idiotic kid when you were 7 years old who would say the same thing in your face, 1,000 times. You're a goofball. You're a goofball. You just want to punch the kid. You just want to punch that company. And so we break down into these, again, like we talked at the beginning, these highly tactical, narrow things. You allow somebody in your company to have a budget that it doesn't matter how offensive it is, how annoying it is. You say it's successful because at the end of the day it was profitable. But you can't measure all the people who thought, oh my God, I am never doing business with these people again.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, that is you're hitting my nerve in the right way, because this is at the core of my book and my belief that sustainable growth marketing, the way to grow as a business with patience, is to bring value, is to connect, is to use things like personalization, but to use the technology that enable you to create human connection, not use technology like for example retargeting because you can't. That's not a human connection. That's just like, so for me, like sometimes some technology can be great because it can enable you to actually scale, but use that to scale human connection, not to automation. I think we're going so far into this automation funnel and I call it like just basically customer enslavement, where it's like in a digital form. It's really, it's. I think that there's a backlash, and it's already happening. The same way that there was a huge backlash when those pop-up ads used to come up. Remember that? Like that? Do you remember back?
I do. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and like that didn't end well, right? Like that's ended.
So I think that there's a relatively easy differentiation. So I think that automation that actually serves, well, I'll step back. 15 years ago, I was part of a CFO magazine study that looked at, which customer-focused investments, meaning like CRM and things like that, work best. And it came up with such a simple, but it was really, we interviewed a ton of CFOs and finance executives, and what happened was that the number one criteria for whether an investment in customer-focused initiative actually paid off for the company, the thing that made that true was if there was a stated benefit to customers upfront in the project. Like that was one of the core goals. Seems so obvious, and yet most times there was not. The most times in the customer focused initiative, there was no stated benefit to the customer up front, which is just like, duh, I mean, seriously. And so but there's uses of technology that are great, so if you say, like, I think, people who bought this product also bought this, people who, all these things that come up that are serving you, that you can see, oh, wow, that's important information.
It's based on your
thank you.
interest, not the salesman interest. That's where that implicit combined, right? Yeah.
Right. And so one of the things that Amazon got early, and they violate this sometimes, but is that it's what would you like to know? Because they don't really care if you buy. I mean, this isn't 100% true because they now have all these Amazon brands that aren't obviously Amazon brands, but they give you the choice. I mean, Amazon did this thing which was heresy, which is you could actually buy someone else's product on Amazon. Like in the early days, you could just buy. I mean, that was like, seriously. So like, you don't have to buy. You can go to the Quaker Oats website and buy Nestle's product, like that. What? But they don't care, so they'll make 10 cents on that order. And that's how you get huge. It's like, we just want all the orders. It really matter. We want to be the most convenient, So anyway, so I think that if it serves a person's interest, and a person can be a collection of people in a company, if it serves person's interest. So one of the things I do, because again, I don't really focus on marketing, is I end up with a lot of my clients talking about culture, the culture in their company. One of the things that I've had a lot of conversations recently, we've written a lot, is the idea of competency versus culture. And a lot of my clients are at the stage where they've realized, so for example, I have this theory that why do companies hit a wall? Like they basically, they get to 10 million or 50 million or 500 million, whatever it is, and they just stagnate. And I think a lot of the times it's the culture that the leaders of the company haven't appreciated or invested in culture. And what they do is they hire for competency, not culture. So what happens is you have a really talented employee who's toxic. And usually that person is, a VP, an SVP, they have influence, they're GM. And what you do is, so you say, well, I can't fire Joe. Joe is the best sales guy here. I can't fire Joe. Joe has built our 3 biggest divisions. But Joe is an idiot.
Oh man,
Joe lies,
people
cheats, and
listening right
steals.
now can resonate with that. So many people can. Everybody's experienced this.
Yeah, and so you, but you have to say, if we're going to tolerate someone in our, so do you think about that? Well, how many people does Joe touch? Joe runs half the company. You allow that toxic person to run half your company, you run a horrific company. Period. End of story. And so, and this gets back to the other stuff we're talking about in terms of how we, so you allow, in terms of, generating revenues is 100% of the company. You allow practices in those groups that, sales, marketing, whatever, customer service. You allow practices that are essentially toxic to persist. Your culture is dirt, and I don't believe that great companies can exist without a strong, positive culture. It doesn't mean it has to be a soft place, meaning that do whatever you want. If you want to take the day off, take the day off, But there's ways around that. There's, one of my clients says, it's really simple. It's like, I expect my team members to behave like adults. If your son's sick and you got to take him to the doctor, get the hell out of here. Take him to the doctor. But before you do that, call one of your peers and say, you got to cover for me because I got to go home right now. And by the way, 2 weeks from now, when someone says, you got to cover me, you cover them. Act like an adult. I mean, it's not hard to do this, So
you've given me a bit of an idea that I hadn't quite considered for my book is like,
Do you have a title for your book? What is your book?
Oh, it's Groundswell, Sustainable Growth Marketing. Okay. So And basically what I'm really looking for in researching is what are the different elements that could, because right now with growth and growth hacking and stuff, it's all about these combination of short-term tactics that create explosive growth and 10x this. But what I can see from what I'm experiencing, what I'm seeing from other people is that it's not sustainable. Like, for example, if you're like, they say you can do 10x if you just do these Facebook ads and do like these little drip irrigation things and use funnels and stuff. I'm like, well, what if the ads double? That doesn't work. Like, it's not sustainable because there's other factors. So how do you become impervious to different changes and you make it so that you have like almost like a stock portfolio? You have different things that are it's long term, midterm, and some things short term, but that can combined give you some resiliency against changes, and you're able to change and move with it, and you're able to still continue to grow. And so with what you said there, what I hadn't quite, I maybe had the idea, but like now you really give me an idea, and I'm interested to hear what your thought is maybe culture is another major pillar for sustainable growth. I mean, you just said like you wonder why you stopped growing. Well, that is a reason why. Like, do you think like you can expand on that? Do you think that you agree with that, like, or disagree? What do you think?
Absolutely, I absolutely agree with it. That the culture drives everything, and it drives how you interact internally, how you interact externally, what you value, what you don't. I mean, I think that if you so I would say culture gets to what are our core values, how do our actions or behaviors support those core values, and what outcomes do they drive. I just described the entire business.
Right.
What are we going to, and if you drop that outcomes piece, then it's just soft, like let's have a friendship circle, but you have to also have that drive outcomes. If we have a group of 100 people, 100,000 people, and we're not of service to society, then we shouldn't exist. And that's why companies stagnate and disappear all the time, because they don't do that. But it's driven by culture. If you think that you can get pretty far without culture. You can say, I just invented this great product and people want to catch on. We sell 1 million units. We hire a team. We get $10 million in capital. You can go pretty far. You can certainly go tens and maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars. A lot of organizations don't. But what pretty quickly starts happening with our culture is you get, first of all, you're wasting money like crazy, because if you have 70% of employees are disengaged, actively disengaged, and if you're running a company where 70% of companies are actively disengaged, and you're basically paying 30% more for everything. No one is coming in giving their best work. Nobody's working together. So you think, well, yeah, but we did $400 million in revenue. We made $27 million. We're doing great. No, you're not, because you should be doing 3 times that.
Right.
And so I mean, one of the other things that I looked into a couple of years ago, I wrote the biggest piece I've ever written in terms of engagement. It used a piece about for Forbes. It was.
I want to hear this, because you've got massive engagement.
Intuition is the highest form of intelligence, and in writing that and in doing the feedback after that, I got into, so pretty much everyone in business who writes about intuition is from the decision sciences world.
Yeah.
And so first I dove into, well, how do people make decisions, and intuition versus, data driven decision making is everything now, and AI and all this stuff. And what I realized is that, first of all, intuition is not only about decision sciences. So then I had to get into the eureka space, like, intuitive leaps, and how does that work? And the idea that it comes from mastery, like 10,000 hours of,
Mm-hmm.
No. But what I realized was that companies have become more and more bound by process, more and more bound by essentially committees. They might not call it that way, but group decision making. You can't get to step B in the decision making process unless you have the data to support it, and then you can't get to C unless B said okay, and what happens is it creates a world in which there cannot be an intuitive leap. There cannot be this eureka moment that says, oh my God, we're not in the airline business, we're in the transportation business. So we're not taking people from London to New York, we're taking people from their home to their division
Personal
office,
experience
and that sort of thing. So you can't do that anymore if you have this data driven. So I interviewed out here in Park City. I had to do this thing called chairlift chats, which is basically
Awesome.
either get on a chairlift or something. I get to a ski area and interview these really interesting people. One of the women that I interviewed was a woman named Michelle, who's the producer for Breaking Bad. And director for Breaking Bad. And she said, I asked her about Netflix and having data and all this, and they can predict. And she said, there is no data in the world that could predict that a TV show about a high school chemistry teacher who gets stage 4 lung cancer and becomes a crystal meth dealer would become a hit. Doesn't exist. So when you create a structure or you create a culture that's so inhuman or process driven or numbers driven that you don't allow space for that sort of, I wonder, this like out of the box idea, then you stagnate.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Interesting. So like if you're a solopreneur, you're a small business, how would you see culture, like even if you're just a solopreneur, is that culture, still stand? I guess you are your own culture if you're the
Yeah, I mean, if you're a sole entrepreneur,
I know there's lots of solopreneurs
or a speaker or any of those things. I mean, a lot of people are like that. Then it's your core values. It's really, how do you want to move through the world?
Right. See, that's what I thought when I saw a lot of the stuff that you do, and this might be interesting because is like you really help people with clarity. Really understand. Like some of your posts, like I saw one that was like seek clarity, not balance. And I was like, oh, it's so brilliant, so simple, right? Like, and you kind of give a great explanation. And maybe talk about that because I think one of the things that appears to me that you do, maybe I'm mistaken, is that you help individuals, entrepreneurs, executives really get their help them get their voice by getting clarity on what they want to do. And that to me, I think is in essence, whether you're the leader of the business or part of the business, like being able to execute in a sustainable way. Because it's not sustainable when you're zigging and zagging all the time because you don't know what you're really about. So give me some.
First of all, I want to say you're really perceptive. I really am enjoying your questions, and you get very quickly to the core. So clarity. I mean, that is exactly what I do. So helping people to get and maintain clarity over what matters to them and what they're doing and what's important this week, this year, this decade, this life. And again, I tie that back so I don't do it in a fuzzy way, meaning, I'm like a spiritual medium. I'm just going to, no, it's like I'm helping people in the context of helping people to use social media to communicate with the people who matter to them. All people, not companies, people, that a big part of that is maintaining clarity. And it's super hard to do. We all live in a fog. And I don't mean that in some woo-woo, way. We live in a fog of competing obligations. So the post you're talking about, which came out yesterday, clarity versus balance, people talking about work-life balance, all this stuff. It's like, no, I mean, the people who are most successful, you see like Tiger Woods just won the Master. He spent 10 years trying to come back.
Mm-hmm.
He spent 20 years before that getting to where he was. He did it to focus. You think he's a balanced person? He's not a balanced person. Now, I want more balance than Tiger wants, but at the best moments of your life, you will not be balanced. When the pick a thing, the Today Show in the United States or 60 Minutes calls up and says, Scott, your book is genius. Will you come? We want to do 20 minutes prime time on you. You're going to spend 3 weeks preparing for that. You're going to go to New York. You're going to drop everything. You're not going to be imbalanced. But the reason you do that is say, I just spent a year writing my book. I just spent 10 years before that or 20 years before that gaining the knowledge and expertise. to even get to the point where I needed or wanted or could write a book. So I'm going to drop balance for the next 3 weeks
Mm-hmm.
because I have the clarity of purpose that this is going to help me get my insights and my messages and my learnings to a large audience. You want clarity. Now, I want balance as much as I can, but I want clarity. And balance without clarity is basically you're kind of in a nursing home. You're sitting there and saying, "Oh, it's time for lunch. Good. Oh, it's time for rest. Good." That's not to me interesting.
Outside influences are just sort of like you're like a tree in the wind kind of thing versus you're forging your way, or what does that mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, so one of my clients really, 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 he basically, we're doing something on his life vision, basically.
Okay.
And I said to him, the fact that you're going to say publicly that you have a life vision and that matters, that's going to be life-changing to other people. They're just saying that. It's not what yours is that matters. It's the idea that, oh my God, I should have one. I should have clarity over not like what's my job. Why am I here? What am I doing? And so yeah, I think that's and that, by the way, gets to kind of wrap this up. It gets to, if I know what my core values are, my beliefs, and I'm working with a company that doesn't have any, or I don't know what they are, or they don't live by them, well, I just sold out. It may not be that I
you
sold
won't
out.
feel good. You'll be in conflict.
Or you're just not doing it. You can't get all your income, spend 2/3 of your time at an organization that conflicts with your core values, or you don't even know how they fit with your core values. You just can't do it. And most people, I would argue, never encounter that because they don't know where the core values are.
Man, you're like so on the point. In fact, I was just on the mindset mashup with Michelle Soro, and she asked a question at the end of her podcast going, "What is fulfillment to you?" And I was, well, fulfillment to me is moving the direction that's congruent with my values.
Right.
And I'm like, that's what you're talking about, is like, once you're not congruent, then, it's a problem for yourself. Right. So I know we're kind of wrapping this up. Is what advice would you give, someone in business, an entrepreneur, in this vein around clarity? And what could you take away? Like, what could you do to help them or recommend that they do to go through a process or thinking to achieve this clarity? Because I believe this is such a core important thing for a business, for, marketing, for individuals and entrepreneurs, and you will be free to move quickly. And that is sustainable, because it's not sustainable to, zig and zag, as I was saying. So anyways, what do you think?
Yeah, so I have an article up on LinkedIn right now that it's
I'll put it in the
quiet.
podcast notes, just,
But it's be quiet, make friends, have a purpose, and I think that's the simplest way I can say it, which is, so take time on a regular basis to step back and be quiet, whether it's meditate or you want to run or whatever it is. Make friends. You have to value relationships, and you have to listen in relationships, which gives you a lot of feedback, and have friends who you have a strong enough relationship with that you can say things like, how did I come across? When at dinner, was I talking at people, or was I listening? What was my energy? And then have a purpose. It doesn't have to be, some people want to save the world, and some people just want to be like a loving parent, and I shouldn't even say just. It's like, but what is that? And because I think that rising above tasks gives people all sorts of fulfillment. But sometimes there are people who you have to nudge and say, yep, even you, you think of yourself as an entrepreneur, you think of yourself as a no-nonsense person, even you have to have a purpose. And you can't resist that impulse to figure that out.
So you just be quiet, make friends, have a purpose.
Yeah.
But how do you help? Like, how does someone find their purpose? That's
what number one is. How you do that. Number one is if you take time every day to be quiet.
Like meditate,
figure it out.
I do every day, but
meditate or even so for example, a friend of mine who's does this really well. I used to run with headphones on.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you're just kidding yourself. You're just replacing, the day to day with so music is your monkey brain. It's like,
right.
Get rid of the headphones. Just go run. Ride your bike or whatever. And so, literally be quiet. Do not run and listen to a podcast. No offense. Do not meditate with a tape. Meditate with a tape to get into it, but then, so some people meditate and they're counting 1, 2, 3. No, you want to get to the point where essentially your brain is empty, and then I'm not an expert on this, but I think most people, if you do that routinely, you're making space. The way I think of it is you're making space for ideas and awareness to pop into your head and to say, oh my God, I hate my job. Or, oh my God, I love my job.
Mm-hmm.
I hate my commute.
It's like defragging. You're kind of clearing your mind to kind of see the way, right?
Yeah.
Makes a ton of sense. That's a great insight. That's awesome. Well, I feel like I'm looking at my list of questions, which I have a ton more. Almost feels like we can have another episode at some point if you're ever willing to come back on. But I really appreciate your time coming on today. If you just like, of course, I'll have a bunch of links in the podcast notes. But if someone wants to reach you, to connect with you, to work with you, you do workshops, you do speaking, you do so many things. We didn't get a chance to talk about your Park City, which looks so amazing. Your group there. How would they get a hold of you? And thanks, Barry. How would they want to get a hold of you? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
It's just Kasanoff.com, my last name, Kasanoff.com. And if it has information on what I do, but it also has a contact form. If you fill that out, I get back to you really fast. I do everything really fast. So, that's the best way to start. And there's links there to everything else I do.
Yeah. And my advice to everyone that's listening is, like, if you're not following Bruce already on LinkedIn, I got to be honest with you. Like, I mean, the reason I wanted Bruce to be the very first podcast on my whole series, and I got some amazing guests, but Bruce is a standout because the content that he's producing on a consistent and regular basis is the key to, like, what I see as being the new way to, and I'm sorry you don't like to call yourself market, but the new way to market, and it has depth to it. And every day when I go on LinkedIn, it just makes me pause and think. And it's like, and every day it's something totally different, and it's very creative. So I'd follow him on LinkedIn as well. That would be my recommendation. So
thank you, Scott. Like I said, you asked amazing question. I'm thrilled to come back, but have some other people on first. But it's great to talk to you. I realized I should talk to you, much more over the last 20 years. So we got to fix that. But thank you so much, and best of luck with your podcast and your book.
Okay, thanks so much, Bruce, and thanks for coming on the show.
Well, there you have it. That was Bruce Kasanoff. Another awesome episode. Thank you again for listening in to the Groundswell Marketing Podcast. Mahalo.